Hello, everyone. My name is Leah Wilson. I'm a visiting assistant professor in women's and gender studies at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And I'm looking forward to talking with you all today about my presentation, Corporal Possibilities and Neoliberal Limitations, Queering the Fertility-Industrial-Complex, and Michelle T's Knocking Myself Up. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is wilson without the N, 532@uwm.edu. So just to give you an overview before I begin here, talking about Michelle T's new work that came out in August 2022, Knocking Myself Up, where she charts her journey of fertility treatments as she tries to get pregnant at the age of 40. First, she tries to do this without the fertility industrial complex within her queer community, using donated sperm from her drag queen friend Quentin, and with lesbian friends. But when this ends up not working out, she does realize she has to enter this fertility industrial complex. So I first talk about her using the memoir, creating this kind of DIY guide in the neoliberal era. Are there possibilities within the text to create kind of a queer possibility here? Or what are the investments in neoliberalism that are also being perpetuated? I then talk about how the text might be reproducing norms through T's participation in the fertility industrial complex. And then I go into thinking about, is there possibilities for queering the FIC through how T presents the idea of desiring queerness? So first of all, T's oeuvre includes many genres: young adult novels, tarot books, graphic novels, but she is largely known for her self-writing, generally classified as memoir or semi-autobiographical works, such as The Chelsea Whistle or How to Grow Up. Her serial memorializing situates her within the neoliberal memoir boom of the 1990s and propelled writings of the self to mainstream popularity. In Knocking Myself Up, she integrates snippets from the Trying to Conceive message boards, advice from her sister, who's also trying to get pregnant, and her queer community, and other pop media while documenting her corporeal experience as she goes through these changes. In this way, she creates a work that tells her story of trying to get herself pregnant, first within queer community, and then by hacking the fertility industry to show her readers how to navigate the fertility industrial complex and queer it in the process. So thus, T uses the text to chart her journey and to also create a DIY guide for approaching queer pregnancy, either through community or through the FIC. Yet, the DIY method of the text also reveals the work's neoliberal investments. Do-it-yourself strategies emerge within a neoliberal context that encourages individualization, self-responsibility, and consumption. Laura Mama writes, quote, "Do-it-yourself projects emerge that often require and rely on cultural, social, and economic capital to achieve. Citizens must be self-enterprising and engage in constant self-monitoring and self-projects. Consumption serves as the means to make ourselves, to achieve a status, an appearance, an identity as self," end quote. Thus, T's work, while providing important information about how marginalized people navigate the complex, convoluted, and frustrating process of fertility treatments, and indeed it takes cultural capital to be able to navigate these institutions, and she's sharing that information, she nonetheless participates in the perpetuation of neoliberal ideals and presenting her project as something achieved by the individual, stated right in that title, Knocking Myself Up. In its mode that stresses both the individual adeptness of T's work and also the importance of community, she engages with complicity and also subverts neoliberal ideologies of individualism and self-promotion. So pursuing pregnancy at 40, T's choice is presented as a last-minute realization that as a recovering addict, goth punk writer, and currently single queer person, she would like to pursue a normative path by attempting biological parenthood before time runs out. While she initially seeks out inseminating herself with the help of her drag queen friend Quentin's sperm and an older lesbian friend to serve as the inseminator, those traditional paths of queer pregnancy, this path eventually becomes unlikely due to her age, the fact that she has uterine fibroids, and her low egg reserve. It really makes her self-attempts fruitless. So fortunately for T, she has met her gender fluid partner, Orson, who's while trying to self-inseminate. So unlike T, Orson is younger, has viable eggs, and also has excellent health insurance, and also fortunately is interested in starting a family. So due to their relationship and the economic advantages provided with private health insurance, T hatches a new plan with a fertility doctor to use IVF, or in vitro fertilization, with one of Orson's younger eggs, and to then carry T, for T to carry the embryo after this process in what's called reciprocal IVF. So T's assisted reproductive journey thus necessarily involves the fertility-industrial complex, and T draws attention to her participation in this industry through her descriptions of the pursuit. Memo writes that, quote, lesbian reproductive practices and all assisted reproductive practices demonstrate the production of consumer subjectivities in Fertility, Inc., calls its consumers forward, appeals to their free will, and asks them to engage in body projects, end quote. As a consumer, T and Orson have choices, and they whittle them down to the least financially risky and most likely to produce the product or child that they want. In the memoir, T documents their many doctor's appointments, counseling sessions, and even IVF orientations attended with other consumers where they learn about the procedure and how to prepare their bodies. The project of queer couple pursuing procreation through assisted reproductive technologies demonstrates the barriers that have been lessened for certain queer couples with advancements in reproductive technology and expansion of LGBTQ rights. Yet, T and Orson's journey also highlights the ways in which barriers remain for those who are more marginalized, such as poor people and poor people of color in particular. As Paul Preciado writes about France's restrictions on assisted reproduction, the state determines who has the power to reproduce. With repro technology, most can be fertile, but the state often limits who has access to these technologies and treatments. So in France, in the event that people are gay, trans, asexual, or functionally diverse, it becomes a lot harder to access these technologies and to be funded them through that state healthcare. In the United States, we do not have universal health care or those services that are state funded, but the state, through its insistence on the privatization of healthcare and the emphasis put on who can then afford care, really shapes who has access to these treatments. Dorothy Roberts notes that while an increasing amount of private fertility clinics use people of color in their advertisements and provide options for using eggs and sperm from diverse clientele, these choices are still only available to the wealthy. Moreover, while upper-class white women are encouraged to use technologies for genetic screenings to produce the best babies, there are, quote, an assortment of laws and policies to discourage women of color from having babies at all, end quote. Thus, nations play a role in who and what citizens are reproduced. In the neoliberal period, the child is human capital, that one must have the right social status, income, and work ethic to produce, making T's participation in the FIC a political issue and one that displays how the state has made care for some citizens economically advantaged, access to private health care, expensive clinics available, while it remains out of reach for many. A fact T underscores was true of her for most of her life. And I just thought you'd all enjoy this Facebook profile picture for Fertility Within Reach, a clinic in Boston, Massachusetts from Pride Month, June 2021. So importantly, the ability to participate in assisted repro technology also produces specific citizens through the process of reproduction. Making the technology available to some forms of desirable citizens and less available to others, the state capitalist market produces subjectivity itself. Those who use assisted reproductive technology, or ART, achieve parenthood and fulfill their desires. Undoubtedly, T participates in this project as she declares, quote, I had a child so that I could experience the most that the earthly plane offers up to us. I wanted to feel the most of my body. I wanted to experience new levels of love. My body is now changed forever, and so is my psyche, my capacity for love, my connection to the cosmos, and the depth of my ignorance as to what it all means, end quote. T's sentiment attests to the subjectification process of procreation, illustrating the way it produces new identities. It is thus worthwhile to explore if and how the production of this subjectivity can be queered by focusing on how T displays the process in her text. So scholars such as Mamo and Doris Liebstetter question how and if participation in the FIC can be queered. Indeed, due to the access issues and how the system reproduces norms, there are limitations to its queering potential. As Mamo states, Even with the many choices available to lesbian couples, there's still one option: biological reproduction. Additionally, with the way normative citizens, including queer ones who are more likely to meet homonormative ideals, are favored in reproduction, this practice nonetheless reproduces normative citizens. Yet, I would like to consider the ways in which T attempts to challenge the heteronormativity of the FIC and how she elevates queerness in the text to decenter heterosexuality and show that queerness and queer kinship are desirable. The queer community practices that ground T's initial attempts at conceiving without the services of the FIC illuminate the ways non-heterosexual procreation practices can queer kinship. Even when T realizes that she will have to enter the FIC to achieve her vision of motherhood, she keeps her community present by notifying them of her journey and its hiccups. T remarks that, quote, "Everyone is generously offering to amp up my fertility, and even a butch I've known for a while is pledging to do a special butch fertility dance in her home for me," end quote. Moreover, she creates a queer family by the technology of reciprocal IVF and the insistence on using Quentin's sperm rather than from a fertility clinic doctor or donor. So in the text, he underscores the way these decisions display the clinic's heteronormativity. When asked for their spouse and donor's names, for example, T explains that he, the spouse, is a they, and that they are unmarried. When the administrative staff responds with, quote, "Okay, so you'll be requiring sperm as well," end quote, T replies that they have their own donor. These two choices open up possibilities of disturbing the clinic's heteronormativity. For one, Orson's gender and the way that their eggs are used in reciprocal IVF challenges the process of the clinic's procedures, which requires that a known egg donor and a surrogate have counseling beforehand, because there's no way that they're romantically involved, right? T remarks that this counseling is not needed because of their relationship, but the language for this relationship within the clinic does not exist, and they are forced to undergo this counseling that is intended for people who do not know each other very well in that context. So with T wondering, so then T wonders, is this requirement homophobic? Additionally, the insistence on using T-selected donor selected donor rattles the clinic, as this generally is not the custom and is actually warned against, as self-selected donors can create legal and familial complications down the road, with the staff saying, there always becomes grandparents are always the problem here, so we want you to use a private donor. Insisting on her desired family formation, though, allows T to queer kinship while showing that queerness is a desirable possibility. As Lebsetter explains, ART creates queer potential by destabilizing heteronormativity, since heterosexual intercourse is no longer needed. Gender assumptions are challenged, as the person who is pregnant is not necessarily a woman, and kinship is queered as, quote, "traditional forms of family, consanguinity, and kinship are called into question," end quote. T's path to parenthood undeniably denaturalizes the heteronormative family unit. Indeed, choosing the sperm donor as a gay drag queen shows that T is opting for queerness. Sperm banks are selective in their donors and prioritize donors who are, quote, "taller, leaner, healthier than average men," and usually possess interests and hobbies associated with masculinity, such as golf, baseball, and other sports, end quote. Selecting a donor friend who is a gay drag queen, T resists the imperative to prioritize genetics that symbolize traditional hegemonic heteromasculinity. Moreover, she idealizes the possibility that having multiple gay parents and a wide network of queer kinfolk increases the chances of raising a queer kid. Although T acknowledges her dubiousness over there being a gay gene or way to raise gay kids, T entertains the possibility with delight. She writes, quote, "I'm sure gays who are trying hard to make everyone think that they are totally normal and just like straight people won't like this claim, but I bet that gay people are more likely to have gay kids. Maybe in part because of some neat queer gene, but because I think there are a lot more people would be a lot more gay if they knew it was an option," end quote. Romanticizing the possibility of producing gay children, she challenges the idea that queerness is not desirable or that it should be something that is toned down, normalized, and selectively bred out of the future. In these ways, her work attests to the possibility of queerness by insisting on it being a desired embodiment, identity, and future. Furthermore, through her work, she demystifies the FIC and informs readers how they might go about accessing the FIC themselves. So just as a way to conclude here, think about the mode in which T delivers her tale of infertility. She underscores the challenges of the FIC for those who do not fit into heteronormative wealthy ideals for consumers, while she nonetheless participates in this industry and is implicated in the way in which the industry prioritizes the production of normative, desirable consumer citizens. She also shows the way her involvement challenges heteronormative assumptions about procreation and family making. Significantly, she underscores that queerness, queer families, and queer children are desirable and wanted. This emphasis on the desirability and possibility of queerness and queer families is particularly important in our current moment, where attacks on LGBTQ rights, and particularly those leveled at education and trans healthcare, target queer families and queer children. T's text, thus, while constrained with a neoliberal ideology, serves as a defiant assertion of queerness and can embolden others. Thank you. And if you're interested, here's my sources. Thank you.